Hello Reddit readers, today we have stories on the timeline about losing faith in Santa. Do you believe in Santa? Let me know about it in the comments, okay? I won't keep you any longer. Like and subscribe to the channel of pleasant viewing. Story 1 from user Soulsaver. A lot of work-related ones, and mine is too. The leaders sitting in the secret meeting, making their plans don't know YDF. They're doing either first time moving into leadership management, excited to start sitting in on some of those meetings, and learning the ropes. Yeah, there's no secret to the rest of the super cynical work posts, though. There are good companies and managers out there, not as many as there should be, but some organizations actually do things right. Know how to look for the signs when you're job hunting, and there's a chance to not just go from miserable gig to miserable gig. Find out the turnover rate, not just for the company, but for your department and team. As well, ask about work-life balance, ask about growth opportunities. Look at the company values and ask for examples of how they apply them. Know your value and make them acknowledge it too. At the end of the day, you may need a job, but they need you too. And bonus note, when you have a job, set clear expectations of what you can accomplish on what timelines and hold that line. I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of exploited workers make is assuming deadlines are like final. Like if your boss says, have that report on my desk by Monday morning, and that's not actually reasonable. You can actually say no. I mean, don't literally say no. But it's okay to hold the line at it's not going to be done by then. If they start getting belligerent, look for a new job. But it's actually pretty hard to just fire someone for something as simple as setting reasonable boundaries. Most likely the worst outcome is, it comes up in a performance review. But in that context, it tends to look really petty. And if that occurs, you have had plenty of time to find a new gig. They generally can't share that information as it opens them up to liability. The movie nonsense of what's that back talk? You're fired. You can't fire me. I quit is absurd. Also, for the love of God, don't quit. Just because you think they're firing, you make them actually pull the trigger. If they're going to, you gain absolutely nothing and lose a lot of leverage by making the termination voluntary. Being fired isn't like a black mark on your permanent record. It's a line item on an internal memo and probably reads something like terminated involuntary performance. See performance review, March 2023, before disappearing into the lawyer's files, only to be dug out in case of a lawsuit, or if you have the odd idea to apply to work there again. Story 2 from Use Chef Monster. Having to spend all the money my mom made over her life so she can get Medicaid and be safely put in a reputable memory care facility. She doesn't own a house. She doesn't have enough to put her in a long-term care facility that I felt she deserved. But until she doesn't have more than $2,000 in savings, she can't get Medicaid. She said that if your mom dies and she still has resources, they will be taken by the government to pay back what they paid in. I said, what do you mean? Does that mean if she becomes a vampire, she won't have to pay it back? There was a long, awkward pause on the other end of the line. No, she stammered. I guess not. What's the point? They tell you to save your money for retirement, but then you can't use it. You can't give it to your kids, so we have to spend down all the money. She worked hard to save up and give to my sister. And I don't even care about I can't give it to my sister because she's disabled, and if she has too much money, she won't get her benefits. I'm aware we could put it in a trust, and even though I've hired a lawyer for senior law, my sister won't risk her benefits. So I'm in the unique position of having family money problems, but instead of wanting any of it, I'm trying to give my sister money. Basically, our system it's made me the opposite of what I used to be. If you told me 5 years ago that I would be saying, buy guns and bury gold, I'd say you were crazy, but now I don't even know what to think. What's the point of saving money for retirement and to give to your loved ones when you've left, if the government is going to get it all? Anyway, I hate it. It's made me even more anti-capitalist than I thought was possible. She was a career Ron for decades, and for what? Story 3 from Use Jackpot 777. It's worse when you find out at a very young age. My dad was a paragon of thoughtfulness, intelligence, wit. I have no idea why he married Mum, because she was off her rocker examples. She told me off for rubbing talcum powder on my face because it would turn me Chinese. It probably saved me from cancer, but that wasn't why I was told not to, and we weren't allowed to go to the cinema to see Gremlins, because you'll bring them home with you. When I was 13 years old, I went grocery shopping with Mum. I wanted to test my math skills, so I kept a tally of the cost. I told her I would round up or down to the nearest 5 pence. You can use dollars and cents if it helps. This was back in the 80s anyway, and say how much the running total was. If she asked, she had $75 with her at the end. I said it was about 70-20. I was 7 pence short. That was it. Just a few copper coins from being 100 accurate. But I said it was just a rough figure. Mum looked at me like it was witchcraft for me. This was basic addition. Keeping track of how much I'd rang up that ended in a 9 and rounding down every so often as a result. And keeping track of the tally, she wouldn't have been able to do it, so she would never know how I had done it, and she would never know. That was a boring but easy thing for a teenage brain. She didn't know her arse from her elbow, which would result in her refusing to get medical assistance for what was clearly diabetes symptoms and making excuses for heavy smoking. She died when she was 58, and I'm just 5 years shy of that age now. But I'm healthier than I ever remember her being, and I could see other adults just like her finding out. There's no Father Christmas at the age of 6 is one thing. Finding out when you're a child that so many adults don't have a clue what to do in life is quite another. Story 4 from Use Lids 31. Picture this. It's March 2020. You're 29 and you work as a letter carrier for the post office. You love working as much overtime as you can get. One day you feel like you're going to puke or pass out of nowhere and have to go home a week later. You're running a 102-degree fever for a week without relief, can barely stand up straight without passing out, and are told by your PCP to go to the emergency room for further evaluation because your blood tests came back and they weren't good in about 2 hours. You're told that you have stage 4 chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Full diagnosis took more than 2 hours, but they knew it was lymphoma. Almost immediately, your hemoglobin is 54, which is why you've been barely staying conscious. You get 6 blood transfusions over the course of a week, just to get your hemoglobin over the critical point of 7. Then you also get shingles on 3 nerves in your head, because your body is under so much stress, because you're so sick, and then your spleen is so enlarged that it starts infarcting. You have 70-pound swings of fluid retention. You have to sleep, sitting up on your couch with your arms propped up, your feet up, to help drain the fluid and your head in the exact perfect position in order to not trigger excruciating pain. Eventually, you have to take oxycodone in order to get any sleep. 3 weeks later, you're starting 6 months of intravenous chemo and a year of oral chemo. You're isolated from all but 3 people and your medical team. For 3 months, you have 2 more blood transfusions to keep your hemoglobin over the critical 7. You're almost ready to start back at work, and a rare pneumonia puts you in the hospital on oxygen and being closely monitored because your organs might start shutting down due to lack of oxygen. Your organs are okay. You get over the pneumonia, and then you get to go back to work. See your work friends, see humans begin to get back to the normal that was ripped away without warning. And you have a new supervisor. She's a cunt. But you don't know that. Yet also your station is short, at least 12 routes every day. Because parents are home with their kids, you start out only able to work 2 hours. By the end of those 2 hours, you're a sweaty mess and have to go home and sleep for at least 2 hours. But you keep slugging it out the weeks. You're not going in for intravenous treatment, because it takes a week to not be completely miserable after your all-day infusion. Your supervisor is very annoyed at having to accommodate you. But you try to give her the benefit of the doubt, because she didn't know you before you got sick. After about 2 months, you've worked your way up to being able to work 6 hours. You hand her the note your oncologist gave you, clearing you to go from working 4 hours day to 6 hours day, waiting for her to be happy to have 2 more hours of work covered, and she gets angry, because now she has to think about what you're able to do. She never was a human. Our postmaster told her once that it seemed like she had no compassion. Her response, "Oh, I have compassion, just not here." Story 4 from Use Lids 31. I want to put a twist on something mentioned frequently here. Working hard doesn't equate to better pay promotion. Unless you say something in recent experiences, I have been able to obtain great raises and nods to promotions. I promise I'm not bragging, just preferencing a story for my point. What I have not always realized is that I actively bring it to the attention of my boss in an appropriate way. I think many people, including my younger self, are led to believe is that the work alone will be noticed. This is false in many cases. What seems to make successful people successful in many cases is that they sell their hard work to their leaders and don't wait for it to be casually noticed in a time where employees are expected to churn out a great deal of work. It is hard to notice the great work of individuals when there might be numerous other people, our bosses included, who are doing the same. Here is something I have done that I feel might work for others. Monday, during a casual conversation with your boss, give a quick summation of your schedule for the week. Highlight some things you plan to tackle. Show you have your mindset at the week ahead and that you are prepared Friday or later in the week. Again, casually bring up some of the items you accomplished during the week. Put a spotlight on something that you're proud of, even if it's a small thing. Mention it, say why it was meaningful to you. In general, I think people recognize when someone puts their heart into things, and sharing that with others highlights passion. Story 6 from Use Ill Technician 3936. It's like 100x worse when it's a family member you've been looking up to. It happened with me on Friday. Nothing sexual, turns out. My cousin isn't the type of person I want to be if I ever get married and have kids. Years of babysitting my nephews. And the most discipline they got was talking to about why what they did was wrong. Turns out he cheated on his wife and shoved his son like he was an adult. The kid's in 3rd grade IDK about the shove. But I do know he wouldn't let me talk to him about anything. Just kept taking it back to how he's raising his son tad up, and I know it's going to leave him more like my crazy cousin than anyone else. But it's truly not my place anyways. I finally get him away from the son. I'm asking how he's doing with all these back-to-back deaths for him. What I got from it was, he likely doesn't give a shit about anyone but himself at a funeral. All he could think about is how his hair might have taken attention away from it. Even though his brother passed earlier this month, he isn't very hurt because he wasn't as close to him as a different brother. How he doesn't understand the death of a sibling, because they went in different ways. That all that really matters to him is his household family, while feeling like he's the reason that the family gets together, even though it's typically caused by death. In the end, I'm happy. Our dad's side left before he started talking shit to people that weren't related to my mom's side alone. The most surprising part is that he also went after aunts and uncles, lifelong friends that the entire family calls our aunts and uncles. Dude is pretty damn cold-hearted type in his defense. The immediate area has a lot of people that adore him and claim to be his family members. But that's honestly no excuse at all for the rest of him. At this point, I think it's best to look up to some average person you see on TV doing something good or interesting. You'll have a low chance of meeting the people doing interesting things and looking up to the person who did something good. It's all based on that good thing they did. Story 7 from User Deleted. That's not negativity. There is no eternal, unconditional friendship when you think about it. How much do you really know? Even about people you lived with since forever. When I did, I found that I knew very little about even my own family. I knew so little even about my grandparents who lived just a floor above us. Big house they owned, he was in Y. But even the time I was alive, I knew very little about what he was doing all day. Working craftsman meister marriages break apart all the time, with one side surprised not having seen it coming. Even when you talk a lot, there's always a routine. Most thoughts are your own. The more everybody's life changes, the more breaking points there will appear. It's not about some abstract inner self, oh so well matching somebody else. There is no such thing. Because even the self heavily depends on one's context surroundings. Your brain rewires itself a little bit every day night. How much depends on how much it needs to adapt to new things in your environment. You are not the person you were 20 years ago, depending on how much you experience and move around. Not even close. It seems a bit easier to connect with people you once knew. I see a lot of people reaching out after 50, depending on how good the memories are. There's also lots of people who couldn't care less and dropped everything they once were and new enjoy friendships. But don't be too disappointed when it stops. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and write comments. See you later.